So it's super exciting, super fun, and I'm going to be walking you guys through a bunch of the different tips and tricks and details with all the different products that we released so that you can share all those amazing tips with your customers. Awesome. Hey, Liette. Hey, Paper Lane Studio. So glad a bunch of you guys are joining me. First, I'm going to kind of walk through what was inside of the kit, then we'll go through some of the basics, and then we're going to jump right into the cards that we're going to be creating today. So let me turn down my desk and let's talk about your kit that was sent to you. All right, so here is the kit. Now, first off in the kit, there was this stamp set. And this is now a Simon Hurley Create exclusive with Notions. Basically, we incorporated 2 sets together so that you guys have lots more options. So this is actually 2 separate stamp sets. One is Cool Cats, and we incorporated some of the images at the top here from the Cool Cat stamp set. So if you enjoy those cat images and you know your customers are going to love those, this is the full photopolymer stamp set that you can purchase with those images in it. And then this was just released yesterday. And then secondly, we have Sentimental Flowers. And these are a bunch of sentiments and beautiful hand-drawn florals, and that is the bottom of this stamp set. So, guys, I'm so bad at this. I just had to scroll down and there is so many more comments. So, hey everyone, thank you all so much for joining. I'm a little new to the whole Facebook thing, but I just saw a lot of your comments. So we incorporated some of the images from this set at the bottom. So really awesome. I'm so glad the Ranger team was able to do this. So if you like either of these sets, they're available in full stamp sets as well. So I just wanted to give you guys kind of an assortment of images we could use today and not have them just be cats or just be flowers. So we get a lot of options. Okay, so besides these stamp sets, one of the hottest items that we released yesterday was the Simon Hurley Create stamping foam. And we incorporated this in your kit. You get 4 pieces, and this is how it comes in a pack. I'm going to walk you guys through the basics of the stamping foam in just a second here, but there's a lot of amazing things you could do with it. I know I've been already posting it on social media, and so many people have been loving the stamping foam and all the different things you could do with it. So I'm going to share more about this and take a more in-depth look in just a second. Cindy says, she didn't receive the kit, but will follow along with her own products. Perfect. So then there is detailed blending tools. We'll be using this to do some blending later on. And these are the different card bases. And I'll jump more into this. We'll open the bag together once we start making the cards in just a second here. And then, of course, you got a stencil that we're going to be using later on with the foam as well, and a bunch of different Simon Hurley Create inks, and an apron in the box as well. So I am so incredibly excited for today's class. Now, it's really going to go over all of the different things you could do with the stamping foam, and then we're going to be creating backgrounds with this, and we'll be taking some of the images and stamps to finish off the cards, which is super exciting. So when you open up the stamping foam, when you take this top piece off here, it comes in a Ziploc bag, which I was really excited about because it creates a reusable area where your customers can store the foam. So whether or not they want to take it out of the package and put it into a bin, that's their choice. But I wanted something that was resealable and reusable so that you can put it back in here and have a home for it. Now, let's talk about the foam itself. This foam was really designed with card makers in mind. It took us a long time to create it because I had a lot of different things that I wanted. I wanted to make sure the density was absolutely perfect. That's something that a lot of people have been commenting on, is that the density really captures some amazing details. I actually had someone heat it and put their hand into it, and just all of the details really show, which is so amazing. So what does this foam do? It's a little bit difficult to explain on its own, but I'm going to bring in some examples. So basically you can heat this foam and then you stamp it into, well, actually, let me just share exactly what you can do with it. So let's take a stamp here. I'm going to grab one of my newer stamps. We'll use Crazy Daisies that was just released yesterday. And I always tell people, when you're heating this up, have something extra on hand. So don't reach into your cards, your cardstock yet. I didn't provide a ton of extra pieces of cardstock for you to be practicing with. So I'm just going to share exactly what the foam does so you guys can see a little bit of the basics, and then we'll hop right into making the cards. So I'm going to go in with my Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock. This stuff is amazing for ink blending, adding a little bit of water to as well, and it takes inks beautifully. But I like to tell people to have everything ready before they're about to stamp because it's a pretty quick process once you get going with it. So I'm going to grab the Ranger Heated Craft Tool. Now, I don't know if any heat tool is going to work. The thing that I really like about this is you just need some heat on it. But the thing that I really like about this heat tool is that it's got a wider base at the end, and it's the same amount of heat that another heat tool would give, but it is less focused. So it's gonna give more heat around in all of the areas of the foam, which is really, really nice. And also I like that it's really quiet too. So I'm gonna take this, and I like to hold it while I heat it just because it makes the process a little bit faster. So I'm going to move around and heat this. And I'm going to take about 10 to 15 seconds and heat this up. And once I'm ready, you'll see I'm going to turn it super fast, and I'm going to stamp it down into the stamp here and kind of rock it around a little bit, but make sure to give good pressure. Yep, Colleen's in here too. She's from Ranger, and she's answering a bunch of the questions as well. But yes, you can use any company's heat tool. I just like that this one's quiet and kind of spreads the heat around. So this is the awesome effect that you can get. Now, you'll see it's not really like a thick impression. That's not what I was going for with this. When we made it this thick, we really just did that so that your customers can get a really good grip on the foam, but also if you're holding it, like I was just heating it, it wasn't too much heat on my hands. I wanted you to be able to hold it kind of farther away from it, so nobody's gonna be getting burnt from the heat tool. Can this only be used with rubber stamps, or can clear also work? Well, you'll see today we're going to be using clear stamps, we're going to be using stencils, and you can also use other materials around your craft room, which I'll be sharing in just a second. There's going to be so many questions about this, I can already tell, but hopefully by the end of the class we'll get through everything. It's very difficult to just explain exactly what it does because it does so many different things. So I'm going to go in here and take some of my inks that were included in the kit. We'll go in with a little bit of bee sting. And when I go into this, we always teach, when you're stamping to press down like this, but I find with this material, with this foam, the easiest way to get a lot of ink on the surface is by just kind of rubbing back and forth, and definitely explain this to your customers because that's gonna get the best ink coverage. And also I'm doing it very, very lightly when I rub. And that's because I don't want too much ink down into the other surface where it was indented. And again, it's a very thin surface, so you're going to want to kind of not put a ton of different pressure on it. So Scrappy Shack asked, how many times can it be heated and reused? Well, I'll show you in just a second, reheating it and being able to reuse it. But there is a certain amount of time, and I'll kind of explain that in just a second here after I'm done stamping. So I'm gonna go in with Clear Skies next and bring it at the bottom. And don't be afraid to kind of like blend these colors together like this, kind of slowly into another color. The reason being is because if you get a little bit of yellow onto your ink pad, all you have to do is take a dry cloth. You can see this one's well loved, and just the dry cloth going in there and removing a little bit of ink until it turns back to blue will be perfect. It's not going to damage your ink pad unless if you like go in and re-ink it with the wrong color. All right, so once I'm done with this, I'm going to lift this up. We'll go to my face cam here, and I'm going to take my sprayer. This is just water in my spray bottle, and I'm going to take this, and I like to spray this. You'll see I'll go from kind of a farther distance away, and like you could do 2 to 3 sprays. You'll see down here that it just kind of gets the surface a little bit wet. It gets that ink kind of moving a little bit, but you could stamp it completely dry. You could add even more water and make it you could add more water and make it move more to make it look like a watercolor background. So there's tons of different options here. I'm going to stamp this down, give it some good pressure all over. And here is that awesome background that you can do. So look at that, you can see the blends in between and you can see that nice detail. Now look what it did to this stamp. So this is why it's cool for stamps, because this, the black image is what would have stamped, right? But now here, we've turned that white, and it makes it totally completely easy. Like you saw, that just took only a couple minutes, and we have a really beautiful background. Now, the reason why I recommend using Simon Hurley Create inks with this is people have asked, can you use other inks? And the answer is probably yes. I haven't really tried it, but the reason why I like my inks so much is because I can go in with water here, and I can go in with dry foam, or my dry cloth, sorry, and just go in and wipe it off. and look at how clean that foam comes. So if your customers are a little bit OCD like me, of course you can have a foam that's totally stained, but I like to clean it off and get perfectly clean and new so I can see all the colors I'm applying to it the next time I go in and use it. So that's what I love about my inks. They clean off with just a simple spray of water. So now let's go in and reheat this and reuse it. I do want to mention that I wouldn't leave the ink on the surface after you go in to reheat it. Something about the ink and the foam, if you leave it on there, it kind of heats into it and it's a little bit more difficult to clean off. So if you want your foam nice and clean it before you go in and reheat. And that's not like a huge tip, but if your customers are worried about keeping their foam clean, just clean it before you reheat it. All right, so I'm gonna go in here with the heat tool again, and we're going to start heating it up. And if you guys thought that embossing was magic when you heat that, just wait till you see this. So we're going to heat the foam. You can already see it kind of going up. And just heat it till it is totally and completely flat. And look at that. It is totally flat now, which is super exciting. You can see a faint little imprint of where that ink was, but perfect. Stacy says, we love your inks here. Well, thank you so much. And Isabel said, I like my foam and stamps totally clean too. And I agree. That is why I love to have my inks on here, because they clean off super nicely. All right. Okay. So I'm going to... Yeah, some people are talking about the foam. Yeah, we worked a year on this foam to make it absolutely perfect. And so the density was, a huge thing for me to make sure that the detail gets caught in this. So definitely try this out. I think you'll be pretty amazed by what you get. So that was my quick overview of the foam. And like I said, as we go through the class, we're going to be teaching so much more with this foam. So you'll be learning a ton. All right, so grab your bag with all of your pieces inside of it, and we'll walk through what each of these are for. All right, so pull them out of your plastic bag. Patty had these kitted for us, which is so awesome. So Patty at Ranger does a lot of work to make these happen. So this is a piece of watercolor cardstock. It's Ranger's watercolor cardstock. And I'm going to set this aside. We're going to be using this later when we stamp the images. So I'm not using this for any of the foam stuff. Just leave this to the side for when we go into color. All right. So then we have 4 top folding card bases. These are made with my Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock. And this is just cut and scored down into an A2 size card. And they are your top folding. Yes, thank you, Patty is right. She does a great job. And then we have 5 pieces of the Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock. And this is just cut down to the A2 size card for your card panels. But you're going to want a trimmer handy, because as we work, we're going to be trimming these down to work with our cards. We just wanted to leave them all full size so that there was no confusion. You didn't have to go in and measure, what was what. So you can use any of these when we talk about the card panels, because they're all the same size. All right, so let's get started with our cards. I'm going to pull up my instructions just to make sure that I'm giving you the instructions exactly as they are in the panel. You also did get instructions in your box, which is awesome. So pull these out and follow along if you'd like.
So someone asked, can you use the foam with clear stamps?
Yes, we're going to be going through that in just a second here. That's going to be... the first thing I share actually is using the foam with clear stamps. So pull out your stamp set, pull out 1 sheet of the Stark White cardstock. This is going to be a card panel, so it's not the folding card base. And this is the first card that we're going to create. So this one uses that clear stamp set, and we're going to be pressing it into the foam here to create kind of a halo image around the cat. So this is the first one. Okay, so let's go in and start our stamping. I'm going to grab my piece of foam that I've been using, and let's start off and heat this and start our stamping. Now I'm going to use this larger cat here, and the reason being is because it's pretty much a mirror image on both sides. It's not exactly perfect, but it's a mirrored image. I'm not going to use one of these because it's going to put the image in reverse. So this is the one that's going to work with it best. So pull out this larger cat image. Yes, yes. Someone mentioned foam from a couple different years ago. Yes, we saw that foam. It was brought to my attention, and I just wanted to kind of bring it back. I thought it was super cool, but I wanted to make it incredibly perfect for card makers. So the thing that makes this different is it's literally sized so that there's going to be an even border on all 4 sides, which is really awesome for card makers. But of course, you could use this for mixed media and stuff like that too when you're making these stamps. And also, the density I found helps capture quite a bit more detail in your stamps, and it's super light gray, which means you can see all the inks from it. So it's just kind of a reimagined version. All right, so I'm going to grab my acrylic blocks. Now these acrylic blocks are from my line. We released them yesterday as well. There's a smaller one for sentiment that's a little bit longer, and there's a larger one, and I'm going to use the larger one here. Now, one thing that I really like about this is I'm going to first start off by placing this onto my acrylic block, and then just make sure all of the air bubbles are out by pressing it down. And okay, so once that is on my acrylic block, the things I like about these acrylic blocks is that it's just the perfect thickness so that I can hold it without having to drop it. It's not too thin, which I really like, but there's also centering lines and things like that that's gonna really help you out with stamping. But we found that it was really successful to, if you're going to purchase both the acrylic blocks and the foam, to pair them together on the site as kind of a stamping tools bundle, because this is just a little bit bigger than the foam. And so of course you can create your own scenes with clear stamps on here and then stamp it into the foam just like a background stamp. But here we're just gonna use one of the images. Yes, Terry says, thank you for coming out with kitty stamps. It was much needed, right? All right, so I'm going to get everything ready. Like I said, you have to be pretty fast with this. So what you're going to do is lay out your foam onto your surface and then have your cat stamp on your acrylic block ready to go. Now we're going to be stamping the cat kind of in the bottom section here. So this is how you want it to turn out. I'm going to just leave my card here so you guys can kind of see as you're stamping it as well. So we'll heat this up. Again, here we're going to focus more of the heat in the bottom half since that's what I know we're going to be stamping. I'm going to heat this up for about 10 seconds. And then we'll go in and stamp it down. And you can give some pressure here. I'm not going to go in and like pound it, right? Like you just want to press it enough. Now, the reason why I'm not going to press it too much is because you have to realize that these clear stamps also have kind of that outer clear layer, and if you press that stamp in too much, you're gonna get kind of that outline of it. So if you just have like the image stamped in, you did perfect. If you have a little bit more of an outline kind of around the image, you can always reheat it and press it in again and retry that. But no matter how you do it, it's gonna look great, and it's gonna create an awesome halo for our cat that we're going to stamp down. Paula, we did not include the acrylic blocks in the kit, but you can always check them out afterwards. They're really nice and thick quality, which is great. All right, so once I'm done with that, I'm going to go in and do my stamping. Now, we can choose the same colors that I used, or you can go in with a couple different colors. We've included an assortment of colors in your kit that you can work with. So here I'm going to go in with a little bit of clear skies. I'm gonna bring this in at the bottom here. And again, you want to go in with a light swirling motion. I'm not going to like press it too much because I don't want the ink down into those areas, right? So a light swirling motion around the cat. We'll add my clear skies down. And I'll shift it and go in with a little bit of slippery when wet. We'll bring this in at the top. We'll overlap it a little bit in the center there. Now there's a couple of things you could do here. You could always like blend it out with a blending tool if you want. I find that just adding the ink down like this is totally sufficient for me. It blends together pretty nicely in the middle, and again, if you need to wipe off any excess ink on your ink pad, you totally can do that as well. So if I want to, I can go in and add more colors here. Like let's say I wanted to add purple down or whatever, you could totally do that too, but I think I'm just gonna leave it like this. So we've got the blue ink down and the yellow ink. Now, you have quite a bit of work time with this. Like, you have quite a bit of time, and if you also spray it with water, it's going to give you even more time to work with the inks. So I'm going to just spray this down. I'm going to give it a couple of sprays here. Now, I'm using more water than I did the first time, and you'll actually see the droplets there, because I want it to look more like a watercolor background once I'm done. Again, you could spray it less, you could spray it more. If you want to wait to spray it until I'm done stamping and see if you like my result, you could totally do that as well. And then I'm going to line it up. I find that lining it up with the bottom 3 corners really helps. And then you can stamp it down. And if it's not lined up perfect, no big deal. I'm going to show you how to really easily cut it out in just a second, but we did a pretty good job of lining that up on there. So, like I said, more kind of a watercolor background there, but I just love that cool texture you get in there. If you don't want a lot of that texture, of course, you could even add more water to get that texture out of there. But I love that this leaves that white outline of that cat right around there. So like I said, this is going to work with any mirror image that you have. So I released ornaments a little while back and things like that. If you want to use, mirror images like that as well in the future, you totally can. So I'm going to heat set this just to get it nice and dry. How are you guys? Are you following along well? I want to kind of gauge how fast I'm going and if you want me to slow down or anything like that. Let me know how you guys are doing. All right, so once I'm done with this background, I'm going to take this and I'm going to show you what to do. So I'm going to clean off this foam first. Now, when it comes to reheating the foam and having it remold into position, a lot of people have been asking, can you keep the same stamp on the foam for a long time? And different questions like that. So, as far as I know, I've left these images on the stamp a couple of days and they've stayed pretty much the same if you leave the foam in there. Now I do want to mention, if you plan on just reheating the foam, don't be lazy like me. There was a couple that I just left on my desk to reheat the next day and it does reheat out. I'm going to show you some of them. It heats out, but you still have a little bit of that texture in there. Now you could always go back in and keep using this, and I'm sure as you use it more, the foam's gonna reheat and things like that. But if you want the image out for sure, just reheat it right after you're done with it. But if you want to make your whole family's Christmas cards and stuff like that, maybe you want to keep this stamp in here. It's only like $4.99 for a pack, which for customers is really easy to purchase and pick up, especially when you get 4 in the pack. So like if someone makes baby prints or their dog's paw prints or a Christmas card or whatever, if they want to keep the stamp, it's totally easy to do that and you don't feel bad about it either.
So everyone's saying that the paste is great. And Dawn mentioned that there's a great texture in the ink. She really likes the inks.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad you love the inks as much as I do. Yeah, they are so much fun to work with these blocks. I don't know if you guys have tried the ink before either, but we're not focusing on it a ton in this class, but if you look up some different videos as well, the ink blends really nicely and does some really great watercoloring and stamping techniques, so it's kind of the trifecta. It does all 3 really, really well. So that's going to be heated out. We're ready to use this on the next card once we're done with it, but let's go in and finish off this card. So it's a pretty quick one. I'm going to take that same cat image, right? So we're using the exact same image. And if I'm going to give a stamping tip here, I'm just going to go in and show you guys this. So you'll see that there's a couple air bubbles in that stamp there. So one thing that I like to do to just get like a perfect stamped image is just make sure that some of the air bubbles are out by either lifting up the stamp or just giving it a little bit of pressure. It's not going to change drastically, but it's going to help just kind of make sure everything's nice and smooth. And these are really great photopolymer quality stamps as well.
So which sides of the foam are moldable?
You're going to see during the whole class that all of the sides are moldable and usable. One thing I do want to mention too is as you heat this, the sides might kind of start curling in maybe after the 10th or 15th use, right? You can get a lot of use out of them, but after a certain amount of time, they do just get kind of used. Of course, you can keep using them, but let's see if I can find it. Like, they don't get too bad, but it starts kind of shrinking in just a little bit after quite a bit of use, and of course that's why we made it $4.99. Of course you could replace them, or there's multiple sides, so yes.
Vanessa wants to try it with her dog prints.
Yes, the question that we've had is, is it going to get too hot? So I'm going to go in with a little bit of archival ink onto the same cat image that I was using, just some jet black archival ink, and the thing is, I've been heating this foam and I've touched it after like the 10-second time, and it doesn't get like burning hot at all. It actually stays kind of lukewarm. So I'm going to just go over top of this image, line it up, and you're going to have a little bit of a halo around the image. And give it good pressure and stamp down. And the reason, another reason why I like these acrylic blocks is because sometimes when they're too thick, number one, I have a hard time seeing through all of the acrylic because you're looking through like so many layers of acrylic. But I also like this because I'm not going to drop it. But to give good pressure between your stamp, I find that this is great. Sometimes when it's too thick, you can't get to certain areas to give pressure on it. Alright, so once I'm done with that, the purpose of the technique, it just gives a really great white halo. Like, it just highlights the image instead of just stamping it onto a solid background. So I love to do this with images like this that are mirrored, so you can really use the foam to do awesome techniques like this. Tammy says, this foam is the bomb. I agree. Linda said she can't stop playing. This is so awesome. And again, I really agree with that. I've been playing the last couple days. And as you do it, you just really are looking around for all the different things you can stamp in this foam. So I'm going to go in with the Your Perfect sentiment, but here you can really go all out and choose whatever sentiment you want for the card. I'm going to go in with this one, and let me show you a fun tip as well. So I like to take the image, and if you want to, you can place your acrylic block right over your image. I'm going to line up these grid lines with kind of the edges so that I know exactly when it's going to be straight. That's why I love these grid lines so much. And then I'm just going to take the photopolymer stamp, and one thing that's really cool about photopolymer is you can kind of bend your stamped image. So if I want to, I can bend my sentiment like this, put it at a curve like that, and then I can go in with my, well, I'm going to test this out, just make sure that it's exactly how I want it first. Perfect. Okay, so it's going to stamp just like that. And this one is like the perfect size block for all your different sentiment needs. So I'm going to go in with some jet black archival ink. Line it up and stamp that down. Give it some good pressure. And there we go, a perfect stamped image, and no pun intended. But then I'm going to grab this stamp, and if you've curved a stamp like that, you just want to make sure to pull it off of your acrylic block right away, kind of reshape it, and then put it back onto your sheet of stamps. And that way it stays in the same position that it was designed. And of course, if you want to, you can always, put the arc back into it when you use it the next time. So I'm just going to place these right back in my packaging for safekeepings. And then another reason, I'm going to keep throwing out different reasons for these acrylic blocks because there was so many why we made them. But also, this is a tiny bit bigger than a lot of the acrylic blocks on the market. A lot of them are just a little bit smaller than this, but this fits majority of Simon Hurley Create images. I found a lot of my images were just a little bit bigger because we make larger images to fill kind of, a big portion of the card. So this acrylic block is going to be perfect for lots of your Simon Hurley Create images. If your customers are big fans, or if you're big fans, these are great blocks for that. All right, so let's go in and cut this out. Now at this point, you can go in with a scissors or something like that to cut this out. I like to go in with a paper trimmer, and I'm going to use the Tim Holtz and Tonic Guillotine trimmer. And there's a reason why I like to use this trimmer. So let me go in and explain it quickly. Now, when you're cutting this, you could of course go right up to the edge, or you could also leave a little bit of a border if you'd like. So I'm just going to go in here. And I think on this one, I'll leave a little bit of a border around it. But like I said, you could just line up the edge straight up with your trimmer. But I'm going to show you guys a really fun tip. So if you have your foam, and let's say this wasn't lined up perfectly, right? Because you never know with your foam. So I'm going to take this edge, and there's a little kind of piece in the plastic guide of the trimmer here that I can just look through and make sure that it's lined up. And it seems to be pretty straight along this edge. But what I'm saying is if things are a little bit crooked, you could always tilt them to make sure that it's lined up with this edge and then cut. And that's how you know you're gonna get a straight cut no matter what. So here, I'll go in, cut that out. And I think if you have a trimmer like this, you can find certain spots on the plastic guides for you to line your eyes up with. It doesn't need to be the exact same spot that I'm doing, but it just helps to cut things out and make sure they're perfectly straight. So there's the difference. You could either cut it with a little bit of a border or cut it right to the edge. Anne said your card is perfect. I like the pun there. Okay. Malagra said, love it. I did one with more water and the ink spreads beautifully. So yes, if you want to add more water onto the card, you totally can do that as well. Lots of people saying the foam is so easy. Yes, it is like foolproof, which I love because sometimes I'm a little lazy and I want something quick and simple, and I love inked backgrounds too, so this was the perfect tool for me. So I'm going to grab my scoring board. Now this step can be totally optional, but I wanted to create a card that you could set as kind of an easel. So if you fold this enough, you can set it on your desk and have it kind of displayed like this. Or if you put a little piece there too, you can always make sure to tape it up. But I thought it was kind of cool that the top piece kind of came out like that. Of course, like I said, you could totally skip this step if you want, but I think it's kind of cool. And if you cut a little notch in there to make sure that it stays up, that is going to be awesome. So to do this, all I'm going to do is go into my packet. And where did I put the card bases? They're already hiding. Okay, I put them right here. There we go. I'm going to grab my top folding A2 size card base that was already pre-cut using the Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock. I'm going to open it up, and then I'm going to grab my bone folder and find the center of my card. So this is 5.5 inches. I'm going to go right here on the 2 3/4 mark. And I'm going to score this down. And then we can make our crease. And again, like I said, this step is totally optional. Going to fold that down, and then we can start adhering our card. So to do this, I'm going to take my piece. We'll add a little bit of foam. So I'm going to add a little bit of foam to just the bottom half of this. So I'm going to use a little bit of foam tape, but you can use whatever. Place some of my foam down. I think we froze for a second there. I hope we're back. I think we're back now. Can everybody let me know? All right. So I'm going to go in here and press this down, and I'm just adhering it to the bottom half then. So I'm just going in here and adhering that down. So it's going to pop off the card a little bit like that. And then if you go like this, it'll create a really awesome easel card. So I just like that. Okay, awesome. We're all back. Looks good. Hey everyone, welcome back. It froze on my end, so I don't know what happened there. But yes, this is such a fun looking easel card. I just love how it looks, and I love that the art kind of pops off of it like that. So depending on whether or not you scored it, it creates a really stunning card in the end. So I like this one. For all of you who were asking about the clear stamps, this is a really awesome method to create cards with your clear stamps and get that really awesome looking halo on it at the end. I just love the effect that you can get with that, and it really highlights the image. So instead of just, you know, going in and stamping it onto just a regular background, this really highlights it nicely and keeps your image kind of as the focal point on your card. All right, guys, one card down. We're 33 minutes in. We're looking good. And let's go on to the second background.
Yeah, Papercraft Clubhouse said she thinks, or they think that their customers are going to love making foam stamps.
Yes, it is so fun.
And it was quick.
Very quick, yes. I love how it looks like you put an actual acrylic stamp. Yeah, totally. Directly onto the background. That's what it looks like with the halo on there. I just love that look. Okay. Yes, you can always put something inside to hold up the easel as well. I just didn't have anything while I was making the card, but totally, definitely do that. Okay, so let's move on into the next card. Now this one, we are using some of the clear stamps to do a similar technique, but I'm gonna show you how to go in and get really detailed colored effects as you're going in with your clear photopolymer stamps. So this is going to share lots of detail. You guys are the first people in the world to see this technique because I didn't even share it on yesterday's live. So I'm going to go in, and I think we're going to start off with a Simon Hurley Create Stark White card panel. So this is, again, just a sheet of my card stock panel, not the fold, right? And we're going to go in here and start with our background. Now I'm going to go in and pull out some of the different images from our set. We'll go in with this larger image here, this flower. Then we'll go in with this one, and actually let me make the background a little different. So here I used all 3 flowers to create a background, but you'll just see the technique and you could totally do whatever you want. So I'm going to pull out more flowers, and then we'll go in. Actually, yeah, we'll pull out the big flower too. And then I'll also go in with like a leaf and a smaller leaf as well. Okay, so I've got a couple of my images out here, and we're going to be creating a scene with our foam. So let's go in and take our acrylic block, and like I told you guys, the acrylic block is the same, or a little bit bigger than the foam. So whatever you lay out on the acrylic block is going to be your background. So I'm going to go in here, and let's start off with the stamp. So I'm going to put this one kind of off the edge here. Let's go in with this one, and we'll place that right here. Let's leave a little bit more room than that. Place it there, and then let's take the smallest image, place it down here, and then we'll go in and of course add our leaves in. I'm going to place those kind of randomly, but again, that's what I love about this acrylic block, is it's sized perfectly, so you could really create some scenes with it and not have to worry about, if you're going to put it on the foam, or if it's going to be in the frame of the foam or whatever. So I've got my scene. Let me move this up just a tiny bit so you can really work things around.
Heather says not only is it perfect for cards, but scrapbook pages and planner journals.
Totally. You can really use it for anything. And yeah, like planners if you want to. Like the cool thing about this is I saw people yesterday when they were working with my foam, they were taking some like mementos, like seashells and things like that from trips and stuff. So if you want to like put those in here and stamp them in a planner, like that could be so cool. Or even for scrapbooking pages, you could take anything and stamp it into your foam, which I think is so fun.
And Betty used a stencil already.
Oh, that's awesome. And Notions is feeling very special. Yeah, you guys get the first look here in this group. Colleen loves the flowers. Yeah, they're some of my favorites too. So once you guys have the flowers down on your block, then we can start our stamping. And there's two different options here. So one of the options is you can take your stamps and go down like this into your foam, or you could take your foam and go right down into your stamps and give some pressure that way. It's up to you. I don't really find that anything's different. It might be a little bit easier like this because you're pressing down into the foam, and that's more of a solid, pressing down into the acrylic block, and that's more of a solid surface that it's going to give you a nice flat impression. So it just depends on what you want to do, personal preference, kind of like whether you want to ink up the ink pad, holding it or on your desk. That's kind of the same thing here. It doesn't really affect the image you're going to get. So I'm going to heat this up. Again, I'm going to hold it as I heat it up. I find that that's very easy for me to do. And if you hold down a little bit farther with your fingers, it's going to be like a nice little warmth, but it's not going to burn you at all. Okay. So you're going to want to move quick, right? So once I've got that heated, immediately I'm going to go down in and press it into my acrylic block. Now I literally just said that I was going to pick up the acrylic block and press it into the foam, and I just did the exact opposite. So there goes proving you could do it either way. So when I lift it off, there you go. You might not think this is a deep enough impression, but this is exactly what we want. It's totally perfect. And look at all of that awesome detail that it catches. Just amazing. And if you find that the edge isn't getting enough stamped impression, just give a little bit more pressure on the edge. You can reheat it and retry again, but I think this is really good. Yes, Isabel, you could use it for pretty much anything. I mean, the sky's the limit with this, and the reason why I say that too is even if you do something that's accidentally a little bit sharp and you cut one of your foam blocks, you still have 3 more to go, and you have the other side too. So yeah, I say that you can really go around and test anything and just have fun with it. The possibilities are endless. Cindy, good question. I'm not sure about the acrylic blocks. I always say if they're popular enough, we will probably make more acrylic blocks. These were 2 sizes that I found really worked well for all the different stamps in my line, and as a card maker, it really, really works well. But totally, we'll definitely be thinking about more acrylic blocks as they kind of come and as I find, that I need a couple different more. So let's go in here with the blending tools. These detail blending tools are a game changer, and especially when you want to go in with your stamping foam and do a little bit of coloring. Because of course, I'm not going to go in with my ink pad and try coloring this foam because I want some more detailed coloring. So literally in the name, we're going to go in and do some detail coloring. I'm going to go in here, open up my pack. Actually, I literally have some off to the side. Maybe I'm just going to do that. Just ignore. Ignore me opening the pack of them. So here I'm going to go in with a little bit of Slippery When Wet. Now you can see I've already been using these. It comes with 5 in a pack and they're dual ended. So you can literally use 10 different colors with it, which I think is awesome. Now I'm going to take a little bit of Slippery When Wet, and I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to start off in the center of the flowers. Now, like I said, there is tons of playtime when you're using this, so don't worry that you need to work super fast. You can literally get as many details as you want in this before you decide that you want to go in and stamp. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't wait a couple hours, but a couple minutes is going to be no problem. So I'll go in and do the centers, and I left a little bit outside of just the center of the flowers because I want to do a little bit of blending with my colors. So then I'll go in with a little bit of Bee Sting, and we gave you like the perfect color combination for a flower. I just love how this blends. So I'm going to go in with my next color and do it a little bit lighter and blend it to the center. And of course, like, don't worry if you go out of the lines too much. It's really just going to be kind of an abstract looking background. So it doesn't matter too much, but this does help just get in lots of different details. But I still go pretty fast and don't really worry too much about it.
You have a compliment. Heather said you're a great teacher.
Oh, thank you so much.
And before, someone mentioned that they sent their new card makers and crafters over to your YouTube channel.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you so much. I'm glad you guys enjoy the YouTube videos, and I'm glad you're enjoying this live class. It's always so much fun when Notions asks, because I enjoy kind of giving you guys the inside scoop and giving you lots of tips as well to pass on to your customers. So I'm so glad you guys are all here and joining me for the live class. So when I'm going in with my inks, I like to kind of rub it on the surface instead of just tapping too. I find that it gives a little bit more ink, and you can apply lots of ink onto your surface. Okay, so now let's go in with my third color, a little bit of Triple Berry. And again, look guys, like, this is taking a while, but it's not like I'm super worried because the ink doesn't really dry onto your stamp. So I'll go in with Triple Berry, touch up the edges, and again, don't worry too much about going outside the lines. It's no big deal. And we're just getting all the details. Now, the stamp, of course, a regular stamp has a lot deeper impressions. When I was first working with this foam, I was like, oh, is that really gonna stamp? But actually, when you're working with these stamps, you don't want them to be super deep, because if it's too far down there, it's not gonna stamp, right? But if it's just on the surface like this and you can still see all those little details, you're just gonna get all those little details, and it's gonna stamp really beautifully because it's so close to the surface. And all of the little texture that it includes, like, don't doubt the texture that it gives, because even if it's just a small little imprint, it gives so much detail in there. Okay, so I'm finishing off with the purple. Thanks for putting in the order number for the blending tool. It's very helpful. Okay. So, once I'm done with this, I can then move into doing my leaves. Now for the leaves, we're going to do something a little bit different, a little bit unique. Since I didn't give you guys a green, we're going in with a little bit of Clear Skies. And then, after this, we'll go in with what makes green, yellow, and blue. So we're going to go in with a little bit of yellow and add a little bit of that in, and we're going to create kind of a fun green color there. And so once this is kind of watered down, it of course blends together to make a nice green. Awesome. And then I'm going to go in and do my background in Clear Skies. So all I'm going to do for the background, see, I did it here too, it really just kind of helps out the whole thing to create a nice finished background. It's almost like you're creating kind of a letterpress to do a background. So this is going to give you a really fun impression. And again, don't worry too much about little areas. You can always turn your tool to the side to get even a finer point. Are you guys following along? Creating the projects with me? Last time I did the Notions event, it was a little bit last minute, so we weren't able to, all create together, but I was so excited for today because you all got a kit and you got lots of supplies to work with in it too, which I'm excited about, that you guys are able to kind of test it on and get a hands-on experience with me, which is so fun. Yay, everyone's saying yes, they're crafting along with. I'm glad I'm going at a good enough speed for you guys. So yeah, just kind of keep going in and coloring this in, adding those details. Okay. There we go. So, once I'm all done, this is what it's going to look like. If you find you have any little areas that need to be touched up, you can always go back in. And
Pace is great.
Yay! And someone said, this is awesome, Simon and Notions. Thank you so much. So again, I'm going to go in with lots of water because I want this to stamp with kind of a little bit of a watercolor look like that. Now, I added a lot of water there. You can add a little bit less. So like here, I'm just going to go in and let's say I'll spray it 3 times from kind of a distance. So you get a little bit of water on there, but I want to keep a lot of the details. Yay, Christina says this is her favorite. Well, thank you so much. That means a lot. All right, so I'm gonna go in, like I said, we're grabbing the Simon Hurley Create Stark White Card panel. So this one doesn't fold, and we're going to go in here and stamp it down. And if you guys haven't tried the Stark White Card stock, or your customers haven't tried it, I think they'll love it if they are obsessed with inks like me, because it really works beautifully with different ink blending backgrounds, stamping, adding water, and creating just kind of lots of different things with it. I kind of swear by it as my new favorite cardstock, and it's like the best for blending too, because there's no coating on the cardstock, so it sinks right in when you blend it and gives a really nice solid effect. So look at that. How awesome is that background? So it didn't even take too long. Like, me going in and coloring this by hand would probably take longer than I did to color this in. And guess what? So if, find a different piece of cardstock that you have on hand. If you have more cardstock in your workroom, do this background with me because we can test it out. And if you don't, you can always just clean off this. But I want to show you guys too. Let's say I stamp this, or let's say I spray it down a few more times. And then I stamp it again. You get a cool background. And if you didn't spray it as much as me, you would get probably a more detailed background than this. But I just like that it's kind of washy and you get a cool look. If you want to stamp the stamps then on top of it, you totally could do that too. I probably added a little bit too much water to this one, but the thing I wanted to show you is that you could totally get another stamped image from it. More of a watercolor wash background, but it's still a really cool look.
Yeah, everyone thinks it's gorgeous and just stunning.
Yay, so yeah, 2 for the price of 1, right? That's what I love about it. All right, so I'm gonna go in and heat set this background as well so we can keep working on it. All right, so there we go. Look at that fun background. And then here, the second one, just so stunning, and you get 2 completely different looks when you create with it, which is what I love. So let's go in and clean as we go, because that's always a little bit easier. It's the same thing with making food, right? If you clean as you go, there's less of a mess at the end, so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to clean off the foam and reheat it so that it's ready for the next card that we create, and then we can keep working. So I'm just going to clean it off with a little bit of water and my rag, and then I'm going to go in and heat set it. Yay, everyone said so much fun. Everyone's loving the technique that we just did. It's one of my favorites, and I love that you can go in with those detail blending tools that Ranger has and go in and do lots of insane detail coloring on your project. And also, if you have a little bit that went off the edge, you can always wipe that off as well. Perfect. So now let's go in here with this background, and we're gonna do something really simple with it. Right, so I'm going to go in and do a little bit more stamping. I keep a ton of these blocks on hand because they are so useful. I opened like 3 packs and I'm using them every day because they're my faves. So I'm going to grab the sentiment from this that says thinking of you. I believe we're using the sending hugs one later, but you could always switch it around if you want to, or use both of the same. And then I'm going to, one thing that I like to do with the acrylic blocks, let me pull in a piece of white cardstock so you guys can see a little bit clearer. So you can see the bottom of that word thinking. Not always is it like is the edges like perfectly straight, right? So you can see with this stamp, it might be a little bit hard for you to line up, and that's why I love these acrylic blocks, because they have those easy lines for lining things up. So the center lines that are bolded are the exact center of the acrylic block, and then the other ones are all at a 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna go in here, go over top of that acrylic block. And the thing that I like to do is I line up one of those lines with the bottom of the actual sentiment. So if you see there, I line it up with every part of that word, that, the thinking, as it goes straight across. I line it up with the bottom of all of those letters so that I know that it's going to be straight on my acrylic block.
Do you know if you can use a baby wipe to clean the foam? Or do you recommend water?
So the thing is I like to just use water and a dry rag. I know a lot of people like to use baby wipes, but sometimes I find that baby wipes get a little bit sudsy and it like adds a little bit more moisture into the block than I would like. So I use like the tiniest bit of water that I can so that this stays pretty dry. But yes, you probably could use a baby wipe as well. I just with everything use water and a rag. So that's just personal preference, but you probably could use a baby wipe too to clean it off.
So do the blocks have grid lines on both sides?
They are gridded on one side, but you can kind of see, I actually use it, like if you can read my name, you know you're pretty much on the right side. Either side is going to work perfectly, but this side, that way the lines are closer to your sentiment and you can see them a little bit easier as you're lining things up. But the thing I like about these lines is they're kind of etched in there. So like I use stamp cleaners on here and stuff like that, and I haven't had them scrape off, I haven't had them rub off, and I've been using them for 3 months and really excited about them. Okay, let me talk about this stamp set. So I covered this at the beginning, but we made you guys an exclusive stamp set. So the top of this stamp set is made with Cool Cats, and I think Colleen or Notions, if you could put the links in for Cool Cats and the Sentimental Flowers stamp set. So these are the two stamp sets. This one is Sentimental Flowers, this one is Cool Cats, and we just took a bunch of different images from both sets and put them together so that you guys get a lot of options and you can kind of work with both and then see which one you like best and which one your customers are going to kind of work for them as well. So they're actual full sets, but we made you guys little half sets so you can work along with us and we can create a couple different cards. Thanks, Colleen. All right, so I'm going to go in with the sentiment that I lined up and take my Jet Black Archival ink, and I pretty much stamp everything in Jet Black Archival ink if it's a sentiment, because I want it to kind of stand out and create a really nice look on the card. And then the thing that I like about this is, again, with the grid lines, you can see, to make sure this is straight, I'm going to give it some good pressure here. To make sure this is straight, I lined it up with the edge lines to make sure that it was straight on my card, because if it's straight going across this way, it's going to be straight there as well. So that's how I know that it's lined up nicely. And there we have our sentiment. Awesome. All right, so now I'm going to go in and let's just put this back onto our stamp set and close everything up so we don't get a handful of ink. And then I'm going to grab my paper trimmer. Now again, here you could use a scissors if you want, since you can cut up right to the edge, but I'm just going to go in here and line it up in my paper trimmer and then cut it off. And I just lined it up right with that edge there. So you can just line it up with the edge and trim it off. And if your foam is not perfectly straight anymore, like sometimes, like I said, if you've been using it for a long time, or like, 5 or 10 times, it can kind of curl up a little bit, like it's just on the edges, and it makes it, not perfect on the edges. So if you want to cut off just a tiny little bit of the background, like I accidentally did in a couple places here, that's totally fine. All right, so once I have this cut out, I'm going to grab another piece of the Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock that was included in our kit. So you guys got 5 pieces, and this piece is going to be for matting this card panel. So we're going to create a little border for it. And for this, I'm going to cut it to 3 1/4 inches by 4.5 inches. So we're going to go to 3 1/4 on my trimmer. And then we're going to go to 4.5. And this is going to create a really nice matting border all the way around our piece. So there we go. And you could leave this white, but we're going to put it onto our card that's going to be white. So I'm going to color it in with ink. And here I did a blue background all the way outside. You could use the purple if you want to. You could use the red. I think I'm going to keep it blue. I think that's going to be good. So I'll keep it with clear skies here. And to do this background, I just go in with a Ranger blending tool with a blending foam. This wasn't in the kit, but if you guys have a blending tool or blending brush or whatever on hand, you could always go into your Simon Hurley Create inks, go onto your Stark White cardstock that you just cut down, and we will create a little border for it. And again, like I said, my inks blend really easily, so this is just a testament to them already. Like you can see just a super smooth fade into white. So if we weren't covering it up, that would be amazing. And it takes like almost no effort to just go around the edge and create your own colored cardstock, because I don't keep a ton of colors on hand. If I'm just creating kind of matting or edges, I just go in with my white cardstock and I can go in and blend this out. And if you wanted to save a little bit of white cardstock too, you could always cut out like a die cut from the center too. And then, because we're going to be matting it just around our piece.
So there were some questions about whether or not this is for sale now. And,
yes. So everything is for sale now, which is super exciting. So everything I'm showing in today's video is for sale and live. We announced it yesterday. So it's all on the site and ready to ship.
And you'll share the full release too?
Yes, at the end of today's live, I'll share the full release with you guys so you can get a full peek at it and see if there's anything else that you like from the release. But yeah, feel free to show and share the foam today. Yes, totally. All right, so I'm going to go in with my tape runner. I like the ThermoWeb tape runners, but anything can work here. You can go in with liquid adhesive or anything like that. And I'm just going to adhere this down onto our panel. Perfect. And then once I'm done with that, I can again go in with a little bit of foam tape and just adhere it down onto my card. Perfect. Notion's put a link in there for all of you, so that is great. Okay. So yeah, you can go through and look at that as well to just see if there's anything else from the release that you would like. I know the acrylic blocks have been a big hit, and like I said, if you bundle up that, it's a really great tip to bundle up the acrylic block set along with the foam, and it's still at a really great price point where a lot of people will pick it up, and you know, the acrylic blocks kind of work hand in hand with the foam to go really nicely together. So I'm going to take this, and I'm using my Stark White card stock, and this is one of the card bases. So it's one of the top folding card bases, and I just adhered that down with a little bit of foam tape. So there is our card, and again, you want to make sure this opens the correct way before you adhere it down. I've done that too many times, but here is that card. So same thing that we created here. Again, like I said, this one, on the left, I used a little bit more water, so you can see there was a lot more watercolor of an effect there. Whereas on this one, I used a little bit less water, and you get some more bold ink colors. You can see a lot more of the detail, and there's no, splotches of color. So it really depends on what you want and what kind of look you want as you're creating the cards. Okay. Someone said, looks so easy, but it didn't work out that easy. You know, sometimes it takes a little bit of practice. Sometimes it can be if you're too light-handed, too heavy-handed, things like that. So after the live, if you want to, you can always test out on different pieces of cardstock and create more backgrounds. I know that it's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's pretty easy to do once you get the hang of it after 1 or 2 tries. All right, so let's go in with the next card. Are you guys all ready? Let me know if you guys are ready to move on to the next card. So these are the 2 cards that we've created so far. And I'm so excited to share the next one. All right. So the next card is this one. And this is going to be using a stencil to create the same fun texture in the back. Someone said no. We'll wait. Oh, someone said ready. Okay, so if you're still a little bit
almost.
If you're almost waiting, you could always catch up. I'll go a little bit slow at the beginning of this one as I kind of explain things so that you can be ready to move on in just a second. So with this card, we used a stencil for this background, and then I'll show you kind of a cool ink blending technique as well that we can use along with the foam to get a really awesome shadow on the background, which is a great tip in case if you want to do a little bit of blending and get a really cool effect. So let's get into it. All right, I'm going to set this off to the side right here so you guys can still see it as we're working. And we are going to go in with one of the card panels. So again, this is a Stark White card panel. It's 110 pounds and super bright white, but it is the cut one. It doesn't have a fold in it, so grab the panel this time. All right, so we're going to be going in with a piece of the foam again, and we're going to create a fun background with this. Now for this one, I'm using the, let's see, where did I put it? you guys got one of these in your kit, we're using the Nothing But Net stencil. And when I talk about stencils, let me show you some different things here. So I was working with stencils yesterday, and this is my sweater weather stencil as well. So this is perfect for the people if you're falling behind a little bit. Totally finish your background as you're listening to this next tip as we talk about the stencils. So, there's two different things about the stencil. Now, stencils are going to give you the exact same look as the stencil would, but it's going to be a little bit quicker of a process than going in and ink blending it. And you're also going to get a really nice look of a stamped background. I know a lot of people were telling me, like, you know, there's so many times I've wished that a stencil was a stamp. And so this is going to be a really great technique for that. Now, if we use a stencil like the Nothing But Net stencil, you can see there's a lot of cuts out of this one, and it's a pretty thin lined stencil. So this is going to press in, and the thinner lines are going to create the indent, and then the parts that are actually open on the stencil is going to create what stamps. So on this, you'll see it's the exact same as what the stencil would do. It just saves a little bit of time and gives some really cool effects as well. And that's the one we're going to be using today. But if you go in with a stencil like the sweater weather stencil, right, you're going to go in and press this down. And what's going to imprint or pop out like the stamp is going to be the design again. But this one, you can see there's a lot of the plastic area, which means, you know, it's not going to be a super raised stamp. So there's still going to be ink that hits in the other areas. So this one turns it into something that you totally can't get with the stencil. So this creates kind of a little bit of a halo around the image. It makes a darker image wherever the actual design was, and then a lighter stamp in the background where the design wasn't. So, super cool. Two different effects. Every stencil is going to work a little bit differently, so try out the different stencils you have in your collection. The thing I do have to say is the more plastic you have, you know, the more differing of a look it's going to give. All right, so Kara, thank you so much for putting in the number for the stencil. So let's go in. Again, I'm going to have my stencil ready, and we're going to heat our foam here. So I'm just heating it again for about 10 seconds.
Do you have to spray water on the foam?
So I'll go over that in just a second here. There is a little bit of a difference that you get in the effect if you don't spray the foam with water, but it doesn't. I'm going to actually reheat this again. So like if you don't get the exact impression you want, it's not too bad, but the edges I didn't press enough. So I'm going to just go in again, and that's what I love about this. It's totally forgivable. So I'll answer the water question in just a second as we go to stamp this one down. Give good pressure. I tend to put my whole hand over top of it and then kind of rock a little bit so that every part of this foam gets hit. And you can see that was definitely a better impression. So that's another thing too. I know some people were saying that it's a little bit more difficult than it looks. So if you notice that your stamp isn't, you know, doesn't at least have a little bit of a divot in it, then totally try again. If it looks like it's doesn't have like an edge to it that it's going to stamp. Right, so I'll move this stencil off to the side. This is also just a really great stencil to use if you want to just do it for stenciling too. And then let's go in and stamp this. And here's where I'm going to answer the question about moving and blending the inks together. So I'm going to go in and create kind of a rainbow with the different colors that we have here. So I'll go in with a little bit of Tripleberry. And again, this is where pressure comes in handy. Like you don't want to press too hard. If you want it to stay like super white, then don't put as much ink. Don't put as much pressure on the ink pad as you're using it. So if I want to, I went a little bit too heavy-handed there. I can always clean it off a little bit there, and then I can always go back in and use a little bit of a lighter hand to just hit the raised areas. All right. So I'm going to next go in with a little bit of bee sting, and I'm going to blend this together. And again, using kind of a lighter pressure and swirling it around. And I leave like a little bit of kind of more ink than I would want when I go into the next color, because I'm going to bring in Slippery When Wet, and I want to create kind of an orange in between there. So I'll just go in and I'll go up a little bit so that it touches into that red, and then I'll bring it down. And again, you're not going to really stain your ink pad, but if you feel the need to clean off the edges with a dry paper towel, you totally could. And then, wrong color, I'm going to go in with a little bit of clear skies to finish it off. And again, I want to make some green. So I'm going to go up into that yellow, and then I'll bring it to the bottom. Okay, so here's the question, right? Do you need to spray this? You totally don't need to spray it. And let me show you. Actually, I probably won't be able to find it right now, but there was a background that I stamped without any water. You know what? Let me stamp this without any water. So one recommendation I can give is to breathe hot air onto the stamp. That's going to reactivate the ink a little bit. And let's stamp this without water and show you kind of the effect that you can get. So I'll make sure that this one's lined up. We're not going to cut this one out, but hey, if you do it a little bit crooked, you could always cut it out after. You're going to want to apply a little bit more pressure than you would in the other stamps, and then of course we can lift it off there. So you can see not as much of the color transferred down, right? It's not as dark of an image that I got here. So the water kind of reactivates it and kind of makes it lift off the foam a little bit. So I'd say, like, if you want to, 1 or 2 sprays isn't going to really make the ink any more liquefied. It's just going to help lift it off the stamp and give you a more vibrant image. But hey, if you like the look of this, which I totally don't think it's bad at all, you could totally use it like this too. I've just gotten in the habit of spraying the ink, but either way is totally fine. So whether you want to, after me doing that, spray it or not, once again, 1 or 2 sprays kind of keeps the lines nice and sharp and gives you a really great stamped image. I'm going to move forward with this one. I like it. So I'm going to go in again and spray this down. And honestly, you could get a second image out of this one. I totally forgot to show you that. But there was still a lot of ink left onto there, as you can see. So a second image would be totally easy with that.
So Amy is loving this foam and thinks it's going to be addicting fun.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Oh yes, I've got 3 extra cards already made. This is definitely going to be something addicting and fun. Yes, totally. I'm so glad you're excited to stock them and as excited about the product as I am. Okay, so I'm going to go in and heat set this. Vanessa says she likes the soft pastel look. So yeah, if you don't want as vibrant of the colors, and just make sure to give the stamp a little bit better pressure than you would with the water, because the water is going to help it to transfer a little bit. Totally, just stamp it normally and you're going to get a little bit of a softer inked look, but I think it is pretty cool. Can you spray that? And well, it's clean already. I'm going to show you more techniques at the end, but if you spray it, you'll get just a softer look. Let me see. You'll get something similar to what we did with the flowers. If you add a little bit less water, you'll get a similar look. I found with the stencil one, especially if you stamp it like this without any water. Do I recommend my ink for regular stamping? Yes, I think my ink does a good job at regular stamping. Do I say it's the best ink for stamping? No, but I think that it does all of the different things really well, which is really nice. Alright, so I'm going to go in here and do a little bit of masking. Now for this, I'm going to just go in with a little bit of tape. And honestly, before this live, I was like, we have just enough tape to do this technique, which I was really excited about. So I'm going to peel off my tape. This is just going to be any masking tape that you have that you know won't rip your cardstock. So whether that's painter's tape, purple tape, you could use really anything. I know there's a lot of different options. This one is like a Post-it tape. Going to go in here and cover up that edge because we're going to do a little bit of ink blending. And so we are doing a little, yes, once again, if the products are popular enough, we will definitely think about doing more sizes and different things like that, because I know there's a lot of different opportunities for different options of the foam. All right, so we will lay down some tape, and you totally can skip this step. I think I put it in as optional there, but I think that it just adds a little bit more dimension to the foam. So there's a couple different options with this. I like to just mask off the edges, and then we'll go in with a little bit of ink blending. So I'm going to bring in my ink blending tools. Again, I'm just using the mini ink blending tools, and we're going to bring in the exact same colors that we used. So where I used Triple Berry here, I'm going to go in with my Triple Berry sponge on my ink blending tool. I'll wipe off a little bit of excess on my craft sheet here, and then I'm just going to use like the edge of the blending tool and just go in and blend a tiny bit into my background here. And it won't look like a ton while the tape is still on. So don't expect a bunch while the tape is still on your project, right? But what this is going to do is in photography, where they kind of make the edges a little bit darker, it helps draw your eyes to the center of the background. And that's what we're doing exactly here too, right? We're making the background a little bit darker, the edges, to make the center of the background stand out, and the image that we put in the center of the background can stand out a little bit more. So you can go as heavy-handed or as not as you want, as light or as dark. Yeah, try it with any inks you have. Totally. Okay, so let's go in with Bee Sting. You're gonna get a different look with every ink you use, but totally try. Okay, so we're gonna go in here and blend out the next color. Here I'm using Bee Sting, and I used Bee Sting to stamp earlier. So like I said, just use whatever color you used before, and just a little bit of blending to darken up the edges. Next, I'll go in with a little bit of Slippery When Wet. It's a pretty quick process too. But this will just help take the background to the next level. And last but not least, I'll go in with a little bit of Clear Skies to finish off my blending. And like I said, it might not look like a ton right now while the tape is still on, but I promise you, once you get to the final reveal, when you take the tape off, it makes a huge difference for drawing your eye to the center and making your background look a little bit more 3D. All right, so let me put away my blending tools here, and we'll move on to peeling off the tape. So just make sure you use tape that's not gonna rip your cardstock. Another tip I have for that too is just kind of peel it back onto itself slowly, and that's gonna help you slowly remove the tape without anything ripping on your surface of your cardstock. And if anything does rip, you can always cut this background out as well. So there's a couple different options if it does. And look at that. There's nothing more satisfying than peeling off the tape to a nice, freshly ink blended background. All right. And last one. Alrighty, so there we go. I'm going to bring that off to the side, and we will clean off our desk so we can move on to the next step. So I'm going to, yes, the crisp edge, right, Notions? Yeah, this just adds such a nice crisp look to the edge of your background. It kind of finishes it off nicely, but like I said, that darker edge really draws your eye into the center, which is exactly where we're going to be putting our little cat. And there you can see the difference between both of the backgrounds. It's not a huge difference, but you can see that's a little bit darker with the ink with like one spray of water, whereas this was just stamping it down normally. So totally up to you what you guys want to do. I love that we're kind of changing it up on the fly though and showing you different options that you could do. So I'm going to set this background off to the side, and right now is the time where we are going to pull out a piece of watercolor cardstock. So I'm just using Ranger's watercolor cardstock. It has a textured side and a smooth side to it, and we included one piece in your kit. So pull out the piece that has a little bit of texture on it. We're going to be using the smooth side today, but that's going to be what defines the paper from the other. The reason why I like this so much is just because it's nice bright white and it's going to match my cardstock really well, but it's going to give us a little bit more time to work on our watercolor and a little bit more playtime. So let's talk about my favorite watercoloring tools. I love these Ranger Artist brushes for no reason in particular besides the fact that it has a little one with a point in it. And I like the price point on it as well. It's a really nice brush set. It's at a really great price point, and I've been using the different sizes for all my watercoloring projects because I find I have more control with just a regular paintbrush and some water. Then I'm going to spray a little bit of water onto my surface. And you could totally use a dish of water, but the reason why I do this is my craft sheet here, and the reason why I spray some water right onto my craft sheet instead of putting it into a dish is only for the sheer reason that I'm a little bit clumsy and I don't want to spill over a glass of water, but also this is just so easy for me to wipe up off my surface once I'm done. And then, oh, actually, guys, we haven't even stamped down the image yet. Wow, okay. So let me clean this up. But that's what we're going to do in just a second here. Let's stamp down our image. So you can use either the cat that's sitting or this cat. We just want something that can sit on the shelf that we're going to create nice and easily. So I'm going to use the same one that I used in the sample here. And we're also going to stamp down the shelf as well. So let's bring these in. I'm going to apply one to the larger acrylic block. I hope I didn't get everyone spraying water on their craft sheet and then just changing gears to something totally different. So I'm going to go in on my watercolor cardstock, and like I said, I'm using the smooth side for our stamping. I'm going to stamp it down, and then once I'm done with this, this is optional, but I think it's going to really help you if you struggle with watercolor. I go in with Ranger's clear embossing powder, and I'm using the Jet Black Archival ink. Now, Archival ink has a little bit of oil into it. It's not enough where it's going to smudge with your finger, but it's enough to keep it wet for just long enough that if you're quick enough, you can throw over a little bit of embossing powder over top of it, which is going to create a nice barrier when you're watercoloring. So I'm going to heat set this. And once I'm done heating that up, we can stamp our next image. And I'm just going to stamp all the different images that I want to use for this card. So I want to use the shelf, but I'm doing them separately just for the sole purpose that this ink, like I said, dries fast. So I got to throw over my heat embossing powder over quick and stamp them down. So I'll stamp the shelf. Again, throw over a little bit of heat embossing powder, and then I'll go in and quickly heat set this as well. Perfect. So once we're done with that, I'm going to move into actually watercoloring now. So we're going to all do it together. So let me move everything off to the side and we can start with our watercoloring. Now I'm working on my craft sheet here, and I want to lay down a couple different colors that I could use for coloring in my cat. So of course you could use the brown, you could use whatever color you want if you have a cat at home and you want to color him in. I'm going to use a little bit of Slippery When Wet. We'll move that on my craft sheet there. I'll use a little bit of Gur on my craft sheet. And I just smoosh the color down, and it's going to help us kind of create a little bit of a palette for us. And then I'll go in with a little bit of Bee Sting as well. So again, I already talked about the brush that we're going to be using and exactly why I spray down my water on my surface. And now I also grab a little rag to just wipe off and clean in between colors. And we can start our watercoloring. So I'll go in here with my brush, and one thing that I like to do when I watercolor is I bring in just a little bit of water, and I'm just going to go in and saturate the surface with a little bit of water. Now you'll get the hang of it too if you're not like a huge fan of watercoloring or you've never done it before. I just add a bit of water in there where it's not like pooled up, but it has a little bit on the surface, and that's just going to help me blend my colors together. So then I can go into my yellow here, and I can bring a little bit of yellow in and do a light wash of color, and you can see that it's just going to give me a little bit more playtime on my surface as the yellow is able to kind of move and mix instead of just sinking right into the surface. So that water kind of helps it move around a little bit more.
Anne loves your craft sheet.
Why, thank you. So then I'm going to go in, and I use a little bit of less water on my brush here to go in and add a little bit of shading. Okay, so if I want to, I can add a little bit of shading with just my yellow color and, little to no water. And I add shading like underneath its head or anywhere that it, like any parts meet, you can add a little bit of a shadow there. That's totally optional. You could totally leave it just all one color as well, but I like to add a little bit of depth and dimension with some extra color. And same thing. Again, I work in steps here so that the water doesn't all dry, when I get to the second one, and then it just sinks right in. So here, again, I'll add a little bit of water there. I'll then go in with my yellow, add a little bit of a wash of color, and as we're going, you can see this is pretty easy to do. When you break it down into little steps like this, and that embossing powder, that clear layer of embossing is going to keep those nice crisp black lines, but it's also going to just help you to stay inside the lines, right? It holds a little bit of a barrier in water there. Honestly, I don't know if I could do it without it either, so it's not just for beginners. I do it all the time because it really helps with watercoloring and keeping your color inside the lines. It's like little guidelines when you're bowling. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and again use a little bit less water and just touch it to the edges here to add a little bit of shading. And if you want to, you can blend out that color a little bit more. And there we go. I like how this is looking. So we'll add a little bit of yellow to its ears as well. Everyone's quiet. I'm guessing everybody is focused in on their coloring here. All right. So now let's move on to doing a little bit of shading and adding some personality to the cat. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of bee sting, and not even in the part where it's most saturated. I'm going to take just a tiny bit of this ink, right, move it off to the side with a lot of water, and that's just going to create a nice, like, soft pink color. Right? If you had the full line of Simon Hurley Create inks to work with, you could go into a lighter pink color and it would be a little easier. But here, I'm just going to create my little own. And then same thing, we'll give it some nice soft rosy cheeks. So we'll add a little bit of pink there, just a tiny bit, like barely any water on my brush, and like it just adds the slightest bit of color onto its cheeks, not much at all. You don't want too much water or it's going to kind of wick away the color. So just use a little bit. Yes, Sue, I'm glad you found that helpful. Yeah, that's helped me a lot too. It's one of my favorite tips. Adding water down beforehand is going to really help you with blending your colors together. I was always wondering why it wasn't blending nicely, and then I was like, you know, a little tiny bit of water will really help make a difference. Then I'll go in with a little bit of Gur for its brown nose. And now here's optional, right? The next thing I'm going to do is totally optional, so don't feel the need to do it. I'm going to go in with a little bit of brown and add some little stripes onto its head. So we'll go in here, we'll add a stripe there. We'll add some stripes to its back. And let's do some on its tail too. Perfect, so that just adds a little bit of kind of texture to it, and if you want to, you can add a little bit of pink down on its stomach too. Like, you could really go crazy and just add, you know, different colors to make this cat have some personality and color in it. And again, when you're adding these details on, like, you don't need tons of water, and if I want to go back in and sharpen this up a little bit, you can go in with like barely any water on your brush and just go in to sharpen some of these lines out right in the center of them. It's up to you. And then if I want it to stop blending, I'll go in with my Ranger Heat tool. And this one I like for heating up inks because they don't move around. We'll just heat set that a little bit to help dry it. All right, so there's a look at my little guy there. Now, also, if you didn't feel like watercoloring or freehanding that top part, we actually included a stamp that you could stamp on there. I don't know why I didn't show you that, but if you want to do that too, it'll just make them a little bit more solid, where if you want them to blend in a little bit more. So, up to you. All right, so now we'll go in with the shelf, and same thing, I'm just going to go in and add a very light wash of color, water, all along the shelf, and then I'll go in with my brown, and I'm using, again, little to no water here, once I've already added down the layer of water to just kind of shade this in. And I'm going to bring in color from both sides of it, and I'm going to leave the center of the shelf white, or kind of not white, but just a lighter brown color, so that helps to add a little bit of shading to both sides. All right, and then we'll go into the center and just fill it in with a little bit of light brown there. Awesome, so there we've added a little bit of shading to our shelf. You can see that there, and then the cat is beautifully shaded in too. So I hope you guys are having success with coloring. I'm going to heat set this again, but I hope that it's working well and all of the different watercolor tips are really helping you guys to blend out these colors and easily color everything in. And like I said, if you just want to encourage your customers to, hey, just leave it yellow and maybe add a little blush for the cheeks, or, you know, you don't have to do every little detail that I added, as I know that sometimes it can be a little bit difficult if you're just starting out with watercolor to get all of the coloring done correctly. All right, how are you guys doing? Let me know in the comment section. I'm gonna go in and clean up this ink because I don't think those colors would make a good background, but if you want a background, you could always spray this down and pick it up with a little paper, and that's going to help create a background, but I'm just going to clean it up for today. How are you guys doing? Okay, so next I'm going to go in and cut this out. So this is going to be a little bit more time consuming part. So I'm going to go in with my scissors. These are Fiskars Spring Assist scissors, and they're some of my favorites for fussy cutting. So if you have trouble with cutting things out, this is going to be really helpful for you. And if your customers have trouble too and they don't want to buy the stamps because of it, let them know about these scissors because these were a game changer for me as well. They have a spring in them, so if your hands get tired, this kind of goes right back open for you, so it's really easy to cut. And they also have a nice fine precision tip so that you're able to get into a lot of the little details with them too. So these have been my faves for cutting things out, and especially if you're not super into fussy cutting, they're pretty easy outlines to cut out, but these really do help. Yeah, the colors totally, Sue. The colors would work with fall leaves really nicely. And I do want to mention too, we do have online cutting dies for like the Cricut. So it's not a die, it's a file you can purchase on the Ranger site for like $2. So if you want to send your customers to do that too, you totally could. But I find that just fussy cutting them out is super easy and not too big of a challenge. So I'm going to go in here, and one of the other tips I have too is to leave a little bit of a white border. I'm not always perfect when I cut things out, and so leaving the white border really helps me to go in and not have to worry about cutting out whiskers or things like that. I just go right around them and leave my white border so that I don't have to do as much work, and I think you guys should do the same. But also, it helps because it lets it stand off the background, right? That white area that's around the cat is going to stand out from a colorful background and really do a great job at creating a nice focal point on your card. Item number on the scissors, I'm not sure. Someone can leave that in the comment section for you, but they're Fiskars Spring Assist scissors. All right. So let's go around the cat. Again, it's pretty easy to cut out. Even if you don't even want to go into that section, you totally can just avoid it and just move from the whiskers to the tail too. I just decided to cut that out. That way I take a little bit longer and then you guys can go faster than me. So I'm just cutting this out with a little bit of a border. You use black ink to go over the white area. That's a good idea too. Even if you cut right along the black line and you make any mistakes or anything like that, that can always be super helpful to hide any of your mistakes. But honestly, if I make mistakes with my little white border, it's not super noticeable, and that's one thing I like about leaving that white border. If it gets thicker or thinner in some areas, it's honestly not too noticeable, and nobody's gonna point it out either. Okay, so Shannon just left the scissors number in there, but yeah, I know that they're always changing colors. Honestly, I don't even think these were craft scissors. Like, I found them at some like hardware store. So I found them years ago, but I've been linking to some craft scissors, and yeah, they are a different color, but they are just as useful and really great for fussy cutting. And my favorite part about them too is no matter what size your fingers are, they're going to fit in here, because sometimes with other scissors, like fitting my fingers into those doesn't work. So just having something that you can put your hand right on the outside of and not get tired when you're cutting is super awesome. Okay, so just finishing off the outline of this cat. Yeah, you could always cut off the whiskers too. That's a good idea, Karen, to cut off the whiskers and add them in with a black micron behind the image. That could totally work too, but I'm just going to leave them on here. It doesn't bother me that they're a little bit more white, and in fact, I kind of like how it looks, so I'm just leaving it like that. Super easy to cut out, but you'll see. Like, it's not perfect in many areas, but it doesn't need to be either. You can always go pretty quick and get that cut out really easily, and then this, like, no-brainer, right? Just straight across. This one's literally just a straight line. All right, so just cutting the shelf out. How are you guys doing? I'm on a card making marathon here.
It's like a sticker. That's what.
Yeah, it does look like a sticker. That's what I like about leaving that white border. Is it really does. It helps it to stand out off the card, which is so nice for when you're mounting things up and you want something to be the focal point. That's super helpful. All right, so here is what my image looks like once I'm all done. So it's going to look like this with the little cat sitting on that shelf on our background. So I'm going to pull in the background. Now, if you guys aren't complete, I'm just going to be explaining something here, so keep cutting that out. One thing that I really like about this is, this background doesn't really have anything to do with cats, but I like this background because it just adds a little bit of detail and depth and dimension. So encourage your customers, or even you if you're creating, you don't have to always find something that works perfectly. Like, it doesn't need to be a texture that goes along well with cats. This one's just a nice geometric background, and it just creates some cool interest in the background to add a little bit of interest to your card. So let's go in and add a little bit of foam adhesive onto the back here. I'm just going to go in with some random foam squares I have, but you can use whatever adhesive you like. And so I'm going to go in first with this shelf first and cut this down. So I'm just going to take some of my foam squares and cut them down. Actually, let me go in here with just a little bit of foam tape. And then I can cut the foam tape down. I find that to be a little bit more helpful. So here I'm just going to go in, and for that little shelf, you just need like a super thin line of adhesive. And so this foam is going to really help me. But of course, if you want to, you could always just, if it's easier for you, just adhere it down with some liquid adhesive or some tape runner just right down to the card, and that's going to totally work perfect too. I just want to add a little bit of dimension to this little guy.
Stacy says it does go with cats. Looks like a fishing net, and cats love fish.
Oh, true. Yeah, it's just kind of a fun texture, but yeah, you could really make it out to be whatever you want. I think that's cool. Okay, so I'm going to adhere that down.
And you do have a basketball set and a hockey set?
Yeah, so originally this was supposed to be, it's called Nothing But Net, and it was supposed to go with, basketball. You could use it for hockey too. So we really just did it for a lot of different sports, but it's so versatile because you can use it for a lot of different theme cards and just have it be a cool geometric looking background with lots of interest. All right, so I'm just gonna do this quickly. If I was doing it by myself, I would add a little foam tape to the tail too, but I'll adhere this down onto my card. There we go. So now let's move on to stamping down our sentiment. And I'm doing this last because I can line it up easily underneath the shelf, and then I can also line it up right above the cat too. So I'm going to go in once again with my little sentiment acrylic block. This is one of my faves for doing sentiments and making them really nice and clean. So I'm going to use the "You Are One Cool Cat" sentiment, and also I like the little meow too. So I'm going to use both of those, but you can use whatever sentiment you want to go along with this card. So again, I'll grab the sentiment and I'm going to use the grid lines on this to line it up with the bottom of my sentiment. You can see that there. And then we'll go in with a little bit of jet black archival ink. Line it up. And I'll go a little bit underneath the shelf just so that it's easily readable and not in the shadow of the shelf. Stamp that down with a little bit of jet black archival ink. Now for the meow, I'm going to do the same thing that I did earlier, where I bend the stamp just a little bit here. I'm going to actually test it out to make sure that looks perfect. So bend your photopolymer stamps if you want them to kind of go around an image. I find that to be super helpful when you want something to kind of go around something and make it look like it was custom made to go around that image. Here I'll stamp that down. And that's just a fun little kind of exclamation at the top of your card to go along and fit it along with the cat theme and your sentiment. And then of course, once you're done, if you have the bent sentiment, kind of straighten it back out and just line it up straight back in your photopolymer stamp, and no harm is done to your stamp then. All right, awesome. So once I'm done with this, the one thing I'm going to do is, we could have totally done this onto a card base, but when it comes to this kind of stuff, I like to have it off of a card base just so I can make sure that everything looks good. And here I'm going to cut a little bit off of each side, and I'm going to make it down to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. So I'm just cutting off a tiny bit off of each side so that we can get down to those measurements. and it's just going to have a little bit of a white border around our card base. Again, you could totally skip this. If you just want to adhere this right to the card with no border, that's totally fine as well. It's up to you what you guys want to do. These are your cards in the end, so awesome. So now I'm going to once again grab one of my top folding card bases made out of the stark white cardstock that was included in your set. Make sure that the fold is going the right direction. I'll grab my tape runner. I like these tape runners because it's just really super quick and easy, but again, you could use liquid glue or anything like that. And then, since I have a border around mine, I'm just going to line it up with that little white border and adhere it down onto my card. Awesome. Yes, the meow is so much fun, and I love that you're able to add two different sentiments and that the meow isn't too distracting from the other one, but it just really goes along with the cat theme. Alright guys, so this is the third card. Now we're going to move on into the fourth card, and we're going to have to go pretty quick here because we have about 30 minutes left. Like, we're pretty much right on track for the rest of the class, which I'm super excited about. So, let's move on to the last card, which is this one. And I love this. And someone earlier in the class asked if you could stamp whatever side of the foam you want, and that is totally true. So here I'm going to use a different side of the foam to get a totally different effect. So I'm going to leave that again in the top left corner. I'm going to grab another piece of the Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock, and this is the card panel. So there's no fold in it. I think you only should have one of these left. And then let's go in with the Simon Hurley Create stamping foam, and we're going to do a little bit of our stamping. And again, super simple and easy to do. You can create whatever geometric pattern you want. I'm going to use the edge, and then you can use either edge, whether it's the long one or the small one, or a mixture. I might do a mixture of both. And then we can do our stamping. So, to do this, once again, I like to go in and ink up the stamp like this. Just a little bit of rubbing onto the stamp to get that cool texture. And then, let me put it back to my face camera so I can just show you. I do this off screen just so it's not all over my desk. I'll spray it like 2 times, but again, if you want that softer image, you don't need to spray it at all. And then I'm going to go in and put it at whatever angle you want, but you're going to follow this angle for all the rest of them. And we will stamp it down. And I just press from the top of the block here to give pressure onto the bottom. And look at that. A perfect image. And then all you need to do then is just, I spray just a tiny little drop of water onto there. And then we can wipe that off. But honestly, we're going to do so many of each color, so I think I'll dedicate like a side for each one since we have 4 blocks, right? So I'm going to dedicate a side to each color so that I'm not having to constantly clean off. And I recommend doing the same, and then at the end of all the crafting, you can clean it off so that we can save a little bit of time. All right, so I'll go into some slippery when wet. And again, you could use the long side or the short side. I'm going to go off screen and spray it twice, and then we can stamp it down. And I leave a little bit of a border in between. You can see just how much I left there. Just a tiny bit. I'll add some good pressure, and there we go. It's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be. It's just kind of a fun, abstract looking background, so I'll just wipe it a tiny bit. We'll move on to our next color. So I'm going to use blue next to this one. We'll go in here with Clear Skies. Again, so this is, you could stamp it like this if you want to. I just find that it gets the ink on really nice and easily with just a little swipe. We can spray it twice, and then I line it up kind of in the middle of those two. It's almost like a brick pattern, right? So look at that. Just a super fun background you can create. Alrighty. Let's go into Triple Berry. All right. Okay, so everyone is loving the using different sides of it. I love this too. I think it's such a cool and fun technique you can do with the foam. A totally new way to use it, right? Alana said, do you have a video that talks about your media setup? You have the best quality of anyone that I've seen. Well, thank you so much. I do have a video on my YouTube channel, I think, about how I film, but it's definitely changed since then a little bit, but a couple cameras, and then I just switch between them. All right, so I'll add ink onto this one, spray it down, and let's put this one up here. So again, guys, literally just following the brick pattern. There I didn't add enough of a border, but it doesn't really matter. We're just kind of playing around here with the different things you could do. It doesn't need to be perfect. And where did I put that? Here's the red side. So this is why I love that you get 4 different ones in the box, because you can really easily go in and create a whole background just using different edges of that foam. Let's set that off to the side. Let's go in with, again, some yellow. I'll bring that in. So there's a couple other things you could do, and I want to show this. So I'm going to make my background a little bit different than everybody else's, but you keep on going with this, and of course, you could make it different as well if you want to. One thing you could do is add a little bit of texture into one of these stamps. So if I wanted to, I could go in with, let's use, okay, yeah, let's show that. That's a good idea. My mom just was pointing to an idea, so I want to show this too. This is just a scoring board. You can use any texture that you have in your craft room, right? But I want to just change out the background a little bit to add some texture here and there. So I'm going to let's grab a different piece. Perfect, this is gonna work great. So I'm going to use this to stamp down our next image. So I'm gonna heat this up, just this edge. And we were talking about household items earlier. So here, I'm just straight up using my scoring board, and I'm gonna create vertical stripes in one of these. So look at that. My background's gonna look a little bit different, maybe a little wonkier. So this looks like color blocking, but I wanted to show you too that you can use different household items. So I've been using like literally napkins and paper towels and things like that, but let me show you the look you get with this. So I'll go in with a little bit of triple berry. Here I'm gonna ink that up. Spray it down, and stamp it onto my background. And look at that awesome texture you get. So totally different, totally more of a unique look, and I'm gonna do a couple of the blocks like this to get a little bit of texture in there. But like I said, I just wanted to really share the options and opportunities you have to add a little bit of texture in here every once in a while, here and there, to create a really fun looking background. Okay, so let's move on into the next part. So I'm going to grab a little bit of red again, and we'll keep working our way up here. We'll spray it twice. Ooh, someone's talking about pasta working awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, my mom is my backup question reader. Yes, okay. Everyone is saying, loving this, loving the planning. Thank you guys so much. I'm so glad you're enjoying the class today. It was a lot of fun to kind of plan, and I'm so excited to be sharing all these new products with you guys and giving you all the inside scoop. Okay, so let's...
Looks like Jackie used some embossing folders.
Yes, embossing folders is such a great idea. You know, I just moved, so I was going to show even more stuff, but I couldn't find half of that. So like any embossing folders that I had, they're packed away in a box somewhere. But yeah, embossing folders work really well for crafting like this. There's a bunch of different textures that you can do to create some really great looks. Okay. Yes, so this texture was just made using a scoreboard. So a lot of people were wondering, you know, there were some people like, why would I want to stamp the reverse of a stamp? Well, it's not just that, right? The reverse of the stamp is super cool because you can get a lot more use out of your stamps, right? And create all the cool backgrounds that we created today. But besides just that, you can actually go in with everything that I'm showing, like all different household items, and go in and create your own stamps. So if you notice like, hey, there's a stamp on the market missing and I want one that looks like this, right? All you need to do is create your own stamp by dipping it into it, and then you have that as a background stamp, which I think is so fun.
Can you try paper towel?
Yes, I will try paper towel in just a second. So we're gonna do that afterwards to show that it's done. I think we'll have enough time. But paper towel is a really awesome way to use it too.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless.
Totally.
You're going to be walking around your house with foam and a heat
Yeah,
tool.
I walk around and we're now just looking for objects in our house that we need to foam. So Might make a whole series on it. Okay, so I'm just filling in some of the last couple of areas, and there is our background that we created. So of course, if you want to go into more colors, you'll have a little bit more variety of different stamps that you did there. But I just used some of the colors that were in the kit and created this fun background. And I love that some of the bricks on here actually have texture in it. So I'm going to just clean off my surface here. And then we can go in and start our stamping. So I wanted to make sure this was nice and heat set so that we can get a really crisp and clean stamped image. So I'm going to go back in with my acrylic block. And let's see, we're actually going to use these flower images that we were using earlier. So go back to your acrylic block if you have it still with the flower on it. And we're going to stamp this down. So on the original sample, I actually had the leaves tucked underneath. And to do that, you stamp the flower first, and then I literally used a little bit of masking tape and just masked around the edges. But honestly, I've been using these flowers just like this lately. Let me show you. So you could totally mask it off if you want to, but I honestly just recommend doing it like this. I just kind of place them right near each other. Actually, you know what? I'm going to stamp this down first, and then I'll stamp it down separately. Just to make sure we get a great stamped image. But that's what I'm going to do today. I'm not going to do any masking because it makes it a little bit easier. And we don't have a ton of time left, so let's do it like this. Well, thank you all so much. I so appreciate all the different comments you're leaving that you love the class, and it's been so much fun hanging out and crafting with you guys today. I was so glad that Notions had asked me to come back and teach you guys a little bit more. All right, so let's stamp that down, give it some good pressure to make sure it all stamps. There we go, that's our stamped flower. And now let's go in and stamp some of the leaves down. Honestly, I'm gonna use the littler acrylic block. I like it for smaller images too, and the cool thing about it is you can get a really good grip on both sides and still really be able to see through your acrylic block. Foam is your new best friend. Well, me too, to be honest. Okay, so I'm going to just stamp this down. And I get as close as possible, but I leave a little bit of room, and it looks more like a cartoon kind of way of stamping down the leaves. I honestly kind of like it, but of course, like I said, if you want to in the future, you could always just mask it off and get that same result. Okay, so here I'm going to take this and stamp down another leaf here. We'll just kind of put them in different sections, and I think that looks pretty good. Awesome. So I'm going to leave the leaves like this, but of course, if you wanted to tuck them in, totally up to you what you guys want to do to create that fun foliage look. But I think this is great, and we're going to move on to our next part, which is going to be shading. So for this, I'm going to take my jet black archival ink. Or actually, no, I'm going to go in with a little bit of brown. I'm going to go in with a little bit of Gur for my shading. So this is going to shade the center of the flower in. Now, of course, if you wanted to go into the color, which could be cool too, yeah, we're going to go in with a little bit of color today. We're going to change it up a little bit. So on my first card, I used my neutral color. I think that was Gur, which is a gray color. I didn't include that in the kit, but if you have the brown color that you have in your kit, you could totally use that. But honestly, I'm going to use a little bit of Bee Sting because I think that would be cool too, because it's a color that's really heavily in the background. So I'm grabbing another little detail blending tool. And first we're going to start off by just shading the center in a tiny bit. I'm not going to go in with full pressure, but the cool part about these inks is they're translucent, right? So what that's going to allow you to do is add a little bit of shading in here and blending, but you're still able to see those bricks underneath. It's just giving it kind of a colored haze. So I'm going darker in the center, like this, and then I'm going to shade it out. This is totally a step that you could skip if you would like, but one thing that I like about the shading is it just makes it stand out a little bit more from the background and adds a little bit of depth and dimension. And of course, if you have a gray ink around your studio right now, you could totally use that too. I just think the color is kind of cool today. All right, so I'll finish this off. And the cool part is if you used red for the center and added a little bit of green for the leaves, there's so many different options with shading. But I like that with my inks, you can add the shading down and then kind of blend it out into nothing. And you can get a really nice smooth blend of color there. So there is our flower. And then I'm going to go in and do the exact same thing for the leaves. I'll start by shading that darkest color near the edge there. And blend it out into my lighter color. And again, just adds a little bit of depth and dimension, and it makes it stand out from the background a little bit more than if I had just left it blank with the stamping. So totally different options. If you want to go in with a marker and do the same thing and add a little bit of shading that way, you totally could. I just like the depth and dimension that that adds by adding a little bit of color in there. So two completely different looks. Right here, I taped off and masked off the edge and stamped that down, and I used gray, whereas here I used my color and went in and did that same thing. So different options. I like that I'm showing you guys different options today, so you have lots to choose from when you're creating these cards. All right, so now let's go in and let's cut this down before we do anything else. So to cut it down, I'm going to cut it to 3 3/4 by 5 1/2. I have a little cheat sheet up here so that I can see exactly what we're going to be cutting it down to. So 3 3/4 by 5 1/2. So I'm going to cut it a little bit on this side, and then I'll cut it on this side as well. Once again, 3 3/4 by 5 1/2. I think that's in your instruction panel as well, but I just wanted the flower kind of hanging off of the edge. But again, if you wanted to cut it more in, you totally could. And then I'm going to go in with my sentiment, and I'll use the Sending a Hug sentiment for this one. Yeah, totally. I could show the difference between my cardstock. I actually used to have, do I still have it? Here we go. This I can show you. So this is the difference. This is my cardstock, right? And this is someone else's cardstock on the market. So you can see this one's a little bit more yellow, and it's also got a little bit of a weird coating on top of the surface. It doesn't look like it, and it doesn't feel like it has a coating. But the difference here is my ink sinks into the cardstock, or my cardstock takes it and sinks it in, which is really nice. So it's actually going to take your color fully. So here, on both cardstocks, I tried to add layers and layers of color. And on my cardstock, it layered up the color nicely, whereas in here, it stayed the same color the whole time. And you also get fingerprints because there's such a coating on the surface of the cardstock. And again, it doesn't look like it, but there's a huge difference between the coating and not, and how you'll get the blending results on the different cardstocks. So that's the difference, and I just like it that it's heavyweight, super bright white, and really great for stamping, blending, and you can use it with water, which is really fun. So that's a really quick look at it, but if you want to see more, there's definitely more videos on my YouTube channel too about all the different things you could do with the cardstock. So I'll line up the sentiment on my acrylic block. And then I'm going to stamp it down with some Jet Black Archival ink. And again, we'll line it up. Here I'm going to center up this sentiment and stamp it down right onto your cardstock. Now let's go in and finish off this card. To finish this off, I'm going to go on to my top folding card base. So this is the last one you'll have in your kit. It's, again, make sure you have the right side of the card base. And on this one, I'm going to create a little bit of a side to the card with a little bit of a color on it. Now again, totally optional. If you want to leave it just white, you totally can. But the thing that I like about this is I'll go in with my ink blending tool, and let's bring in a little bit of triple berry here. And on the side of my top folding card base, I'm just going to go in and blend on this purple color. And again, this is going to create your own edge of the cardstock. It keeps it nice and one layer, so you don't have to add a whole other strip of cardstock on there, but you're creating your own cardstock color, which is really fun. So I'll go into here, wipe out my mess. Then we can go in with, once again, our adhesive and add it right down onto our card. I always like to start from the top of the card base, and I'm going to leave this side a little bit less colored than the other side. So a different size border on either side. But I start from the top so I can line it up with the top of the card base and then press it down, and it should line everything up really nice and smoothly. Awesome. So there is that finished card. You can press everything down. And there is our finished card. So again, 2 different options. If you want to go in and actually use the gray ink, you can get a really nice shaded effect. And here it kind of colors in that. Then in the background where we use the scoring board, and you can get some different textures out of it. And I also really like that edge that you can create with that color onto it. So lots of fun options with the stamping, and I was glad we were able to share a couple of different options and looks so you guys can see the differences. Awesome. Thank you, Kara, for adding the order number in there. So guys, it looks like we are all finished with our cards. So I'm going to place all my cards out here. I'm so glad you all were able to join me in creating all of the cards in today's class, the 4 cards that we made. Honestly, I think I lost the 4th one. I have no, oh, there it is. I was like, where the heck did I put that? Okay, so these were all 4 of the cards that we created today. I hope you guys really enjoyed stamping along with me and creating, and I'm in love with the 4 different cards that you created, and I hope that you guys really enjoy using the foam and testing out all the different things you could do with it. So I want to quickly just share all of the different things that are available in the release so we can cover it, and then I will let you all go. So let me go in and grab the different things. So of course we have the Simon Hurley Create stamping foam. Like I showed, that comes in a pack of 4, which is so much fun, and we like to pair it along with the acrylic blocks, and this is a great tool set. So again, you get 2 in the pack, which is just a great value, and I think it's $9.99, which is very great price for acrylic blocks. They're the perfect thickness, and they have some great lines on them. You guys saw what these did in today's class. They are some of my favorite tools we've created. All right, so we'll set these off to the side. And then let's go through some of the stamp sets that we made. So of course, like I said, in today's card, we actually incorporated 2 stamp sets in the same set, so you guys can kind of get your look at both of those sets. This was one of the ones that we released, and it's called Cool Cats. I just love all of the different personalities in the cats that you get here, as well as lots of the different sentiments you get in the set. So they all have their own little personality. This one's a mirrored image, so you can use it front and back and adhere it together, or you can put one on the inside and the outside of the card, and then so many fun sentiments in this set. Just fun. And I'm only here for the cake. Another year, another older, you've got to be kidding me. So just so much fun. All right, so then let's go into another clear stamp set that we released. And this one was so heavily requested by everyone in my audience and my followers, so I really hope that you guys and your customers will enjoy it as well. We came up with a dude stamp set along, like one of my first releases, and it has 3 different heads and 3 different bodies, and you can create a bunch of different cards for any man in your life. And so this one with dudettes, you can create one for any woman in your life, which I think is so fun. So you can interchange the heads and the bodies to make it look like them. You have different sweaters and stuff you can add on, and then a lot of different craft supplies. So you have the mailbox, and then a bunch of different, envelopes and things like that. I love this sentiment. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but craft supplies never hurt me. So just some really fun sentiments along in this set as well that really pair nicely along with the images. So let's go over quickly the 3 different background stamps you can get from this release, and let's go off first with this one. So this one's called Water Marble. I am just in love with this one and all the detail you can get. It's a great, stunning textured background stamp, so I use it in the kind of the backgrounds to get this really cool looking texture. And look at all of the detail in that background stamp, right? Look, like all those little tiny areas got captured, and this just creates such a beautiful stamped background once you're done with it. So you can use it with a lot of colors or stamp it tone on tone to get some great results. All right, now let's go in with my 2 background stamps. This one is called Crazy Daisies, and this one is the Happy Mail background stamp. And this one is a really fun peel apart. Both of these are really fun peel apart background stamps. So the thing I like about them is they peel out. So you have 4 peel aparts in this one. And I love these smiling little daisies. They are just so much fun and playful. So you have 4 different peel aparts. You can of course use these on the acrylic blocks and stamp them alone, or you can piece it right back into your background stamp. Just put it right back into that rubber background, and then you're able to use the whole background as one piece again, which is so much fun. A bunch of people have been absolutely loving these background stamps. It's one of the customers' favorite because it's almost like you get your own stamp set along with the background stamp because there's so many uses for it. Last but not least, the Happy Mail background stamp, which again, it has a bunch of different peel aparts. I'm not going to peel them all out, but I think there's like 9 pieces in here. You basically get every envelope and stamp that you see, and you can peel them apart to use them by themselves. And there's different cards and envelopes and a bunch of different things, and we use a lot of the different artwork that we already made and shrink it down. So this is the water marble background stamp, and a lot of things will coordinate with a lot of supplies you already have if you have some of the Simon Hurley Create products already. So then I'm going to go in and just share, last but not least, my stencil. So this one is called the Honey Hive stencil, and I absolutely love this one. The cool part about it is they're a little bit further apart, so you can stencil it once and get kind of the further apart hexagons, or you can move it 2 times and get this beautifully blended, almost 3D looking background. So just how fun is that? And that's just one stencil. So always tell your customers too to try shifting and moving their stencils, because you can create some really awesome backgrounds like this one by just shifting it around. Thank you, Sue. Yes, the peel apart background stamps have been so popular with all the different things you could do with them. And last but not least, guys, I wanted to share the background you can create with the foam and the paper towel. So all I did with this is take off a piece of paper towel, I heated up my foam, stamped it in there, and you can just see all of the amazing detail that it gets. Look at that. So much fun. So I know you guys have another class to catch. So thank you all so much for joining me today for the class. I had so much fun crafting along with all of you, and thank you all for joining and playing along. If you post your products or projects on the Facebook group, I would love to see them there. But I hope you had fun playing with it and are able to pass those tips on to your customers, because I know that lots of the tips I shared, they would love to know, and I'm so glad I was able to share them with all of you. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for all of your sweet comments. I hope you have an awesome and blessed day. Bye, guys.